Yumi through as well. Now, the cool thing about Karma, I've got a lot to say about her, is that she can be flexed into 3 different roles. So SK have a lot of options as to what they want to do with her. So I'd actually love to see them either lock in an early game jungler, perhaps a Lee Sin, maybe an Elise, just something that can give SK a little bit more early game control. But instead, nope, they're not going to do that right now. They're just looking at a Tom. This surprises me. This does surprise me.
It definitely hampers that flexibility of the Karma as well, because we don't usually see Tom Kench outside of that bot lane. So probably going to be top and probably going to be mid as those 2 flexible options. It is important to note before we get anywhere further through the pick and ban, Maxlaw is back in for Misfits this week. Kire subbed out, so we'll see what communication or what champion pool changes Misfits bring into the week.
Yeah, we certainly will. Now, with Sejuani off the board, Jarvan locked it in a little bit earlier than I got to predict it.
Great prediction
I think that
there,
it is a very strong jungler still in the meta. Very early game focus, thinks it fits in Maxwell's wheelhouse. Right now, Misfits looking like a very bot-focused team. Unsurprisingly, we know that their bot lane is very strong. We know that 9-12 did introduce some changes where we've been seeing fewer flex picks and a lot more control mages. I feel overall, we've been seeing some Victors, we've been seeing a higher priority on Nico, and I feel the Misfits are going to look to prioritize the Azir in the next round, so let's see if SK ban that one off the board.
And Pimin's well known for his Azir as well, so there is the ban straight away, Vedius. Good prediction on that one. Olaf removed by Misfits as well, one of those strong early game junglers that we talked about.
They may be looking to ban away the Lee Sin as well, something that we know Selfmade is very good at. I feel like he had some strong performances on it last week. And it's something that can match pretty well into the Jarvan. Rek'Sai is another option if they just want to try and limit some of the early game junglers that Selfmade likes to play.
Well, there is the Gragas as well, taken away.
Yeah,
okay. A strong early game with those Predator boots can have a lot of impact on the map. SK here, with lots of different options for them in terms of this ban.
I often forget about the Gragas, but especially over in the LCK and the LCS, he's been rising in popularity when paired up with things like the Yasuo. And that was clearly something that Misfits didn't want to have to deal with. His disengage power and even his early game clear is very, very strong. So Misfits going to take that one off the board. SK have a couple of options as to what direction they want to go for. Given that the bot lane has already been locked in, they can try and limit some of the matchups up against the Karma, but instead, they're not going to ban anything.
Yeah, for the moment, that is just a missed ban. We'll get confirmation that either they have lost the ban or that they have maybe had some issues getting that ban through. Remember as well, though, looking at the side of Misfits, Jarvan doesn't have to be jungle. Yes, it is a strong early jungler. Yes, it can play around the bot side. But when we've seen it, it's Soaz who takes the Jarvan top and Maxlaw who takes the Elise into the jungle.
Great prediction there, Medic. Now, the jungle pool is very limited for the side of SK. Rek'Sai is kind of the jungler that I would edge towards. Skarner is, of course, another option. A lot of pick power right now coming out from the side of SK. A lot of tools to play towards side lanes, a lot of skirmishing. Not the strongest early game, a little bit more scaling on their side, but a lot of poke, a lot of pick coming out from this draft of SK. Meanwhile, Misfits, very strong dive. To me, this feels very much that they want to leave Soaz on an island with the Jarvan, and they want to look for dives, either bot or mid.
Well, we'll see what they round their composition out with. I can confirm SK just missed their ban, so that we won't be remaking the draft for that. There's the Gnar final pick. It means that Pyrion will be taking the Karma into mid, and Misfits, a utility burst mage for Forbidden in the mid lane. This is kind of his meta, and the Syndra suits him to a T.
Yes, I think that, I'll be honest, I'm not super familiar with a lot of Karma matchups. He just suddenly rose into power in 9-12.
We'll learn together, Veddy.
Yeah, but that's the thing, see, you would imagine that Febiven considers this to be a strong matchup, otherwise he wouldn't use his final pick as an answer to it. We do know that Syndra has a lot of early wave clear and can very likely set up for a lot of ganks with her Q and E. So that Syndra plus Elise duo, very strong in the early game, and you would imagine they would look to gain priority, and level 6 for Misfits is what we're looking for. The dive bot is so prevalent, so strong, that that'll be the thing that I think Misfits will look to try and set up in the early game, whereas for SK, a lot of pick power. They'll be looking to utilize the Karma and Ezreal to poke out their opponents, and also that Karma speed up champions like the Skarner, run the enemy down, get those picks, find a kill, and then use your numbers advantage to come out on top.
Well, we'll see if SK are able to find those picks and that poke. On the other side, Misfits going for the level 6, going for the dive, looking for the pressure that they can impact on the map. After having two really good performances with Kire next week as well, I'm sure Maxlaw will have a little bit to prove coming into this game. He's got his Elise, he's got some strong early game. Can he impact the map in the way that he would like? Onto the Summoner's Rift for the 4th time today. One game away from that Fnatic G2 matchup, but for now we have our first Karma of the LEC split. It's being played by Pyrian in the mid lane.
It's a good note there, Minnix. So let's talk a little bit about why Karma is so strong right now. So, one of the biggest buffs that she received was actually the movement speed duration on her E. One of the reasons for that is you'll notice that she's actually running Aerie. Sometimes you see them running the Kleptomancy, but against the Syndra, it makes a lot of sense to go much more towards the poke option rather than the I want to make a lot of money option. But the extra mobility that it adds means that it's much easier to set up with things like your W, the root, into the E, and you can stick with them, but also it gives you a lot of escape tools as well. So that extra bit of mobility, on top of the fact that you keep it for yourself and can set it for your allies, is very, very valuable. On top of that, the increased slow from her Q just adds a lot more poke and setup for the rest of her team. So even though they look like very small buffs, they actually just added a lot of power, but also just overall power to the rest of her team. Likely going to be rushing the Athenes, getting that out early so that your shields can even heal your allies. It's very easy to stack because of your poke. And then your poke becomes very potent later when you eventually complete things like the Rabadon's Death Cap, and you're actually building a decent amount of AP in your kit. So a lot of utility, a lot of strong poke. Not necessarily the strongest team fighter because she doesn't offer hard crowd control necessarily, but I think that she fits very well in this composition in particular because of how well she synergizes with things like the Skarner and the Ezreal.
Always provides that disengage as well with the Mantrid Inspire if you need it. So if we see Misfits going for a hard engage, expect to see SK trying to get out of that fight. Having your ultimate at level 1, you can see the poke that he puts onto Forbidden there, Pyrian, doing a good job of trying to keep Forbidden pinned back.
Now the one thing I will say is I've been told that Comet is now the go-to rune on Karma because the added slow means that you can almost always land that Comet and it's much easier to set up, so it's an extra bit of damage. So the fact that Pyrian has chosen to go for the Aerie means that he's looking to harass a little bit more with his auto attacks and trying to utilize what poke he can for just slightly less overall damage. But also, of course, the Aerie further enhances your shielding, which is, of course, just a slightly different direction to go rather than lane dominance.
It means you can go for things like that Athene's Unholy Grail if you want for the extra heals and shields out of it. Expect to see more of an AP focus build from the mid lane, but we do like to give you all the options that can come out when these games start and when we see new picks. Selfmade going to clear out this vision. Has been spotted. Maxlaw is actually just doing his red buff at the moment. Selfmade's going to spot him out, but Maxlaw secures it. Both buffs going across towards that Elise.
So what we can see is in the top lane, SK have priority. I'm excited to see what Sakurai can do now that he's in a winning matchup with the Gnar. Range advantage over the Jarvan means that he can just continuously harass and generate a lot of pressure. And you can see that already Selfmade playing around the top side of the map to provide him the vision and safety to play as aggressively as he wants. Unfortunately for SK, they can't say the same thing towards the bot side of the map. Zyra Khan, still a very potent duo on 9-12, gives a lot of wave clear, and Tahm Kench Ezreal, you're not going to generate a lot of priority in that lane. It's very much about safety and farming, and they were very aware in the draft, hey, they want to try and dive us, let's get as much dive resistance as possible. So the Tahm Kench, obviously a very difficult champion to dive, on top of all the mobility that Ezreal gets from his E, means that even though Misfits will likely look for a dive bot, it's not going to be as easy as they would like.
But this is Zyra Khan, so early in the draft from Misfits, they need to make it work. They need to be able to play through this bottom side or at least get a substantial lead out of it. Otherwise, you do wonder if that early pick in the draft was worth it. You can see Gorilla's gone Demolish as well, already chipping away at that tower. With the push, should be looking at getting some early plates down towards this bottom lane.
Ooh, you can actually see the ping on the minimap coming down onto the Golems from the side of Misfits. So expectations are that Selfmade is hanging around the bot side of the map, which means that Max are actually looking for a bit of an opportunity up towards top side. Even though that's not where Selfmade was, he is going back to base, so Misfits don't have too much to worry about.
Selfmade goes back early, gets himself the Predator boots alongside that upgraded Stalker's Blade. You can see Skirmisher's Saber on Maxlaw, so both those junglers with their first backs have picked up the start of those items, but across the board, neither of them are having the impact yet they would have liked. However, we are getting towards those level 6 marks, Vedis. We talked about it, you know, Syndra level 6, Hansama, Gorilla, both on their way there as well. That's when we see Misfits having a little bit more impetus to make a play, a few more tools in their toolkit.
So you'll notice that Maxwell now making his way towards the bottom side of the map. Soaz, he also will position himself in a way where he can look for a dive. The river vision has already been set up, so Misfits, to me, indicating that they're looking for a play bot already. The base into the teleport. Gorilla trying to interrupt the back as much as possible. Dream's going to stand in his way. But you got to keep your eyes on this Elise. Where is Maxwell looking to go? Will they try and go for the dive? Because again, it is risky, it's dangerous against a Tahm Kench Ezreal.
And especially when you don't quite know where Selfmade is on the map as well. He just popped the Scryer's Bloom, which means now tons of pings coming out on that Skarner. They're like, okay, he's bot side. Be a little bit cautious for Bivin. Maybe play a little bit further back in that lane. And Selfmade now pathing up towards top. Ocean Drake is the first dragon on the menu for Svedius. Both teams happy to have it in the laning phase, of course, but not a dragon you have to fight too much over. Sakurai caught out here with the Cataclysm, but Soaz has already burned his EQ combo. Selfmade on his way in, doesn't have the Impale, doesn't have that 6. Soaz does have the flash and dodges away from the fracture.
Really good flash there from Soaz to avoid the E, which means that he doesn't get stunned up, but notice how he caught that level 6 first and decides to go for the all-in onto Sakurai. So even though Sakurai had that early advantage, generated a lot of pressure in the 1 versus 1, in that mini Gnar you're still very squishy, so Soaz utilized that window to try and go for a fight, and he actually gets the flash out from Sakurai. So good stuff there from Soaz.
13 CS lead as well in a matchup we said was a little bit of a counter matchup in favor of Sakurai up towards that top lane. Yes, Sakurai has a wave pushing in, so he'll be able to get some of that CS back, but it's encouraging to say the least for Soaz after he has been camped so many times in the past that he is able to play this matchup pretty well.
Yeah, playing very, very safe, and it is one of his go-to matchups. You know, we haven't seen any dives just yet. They were able to secure the bot Drake, which I think is still a fine trade for the side of Misfits. Getting that early Ocean, always a very valuable thing. And given where they saw Selfmade play, they knew that it was a safe objective to take as well. Meanwhile, Maxwell actually pivoting his way up towards top lane. No flash on Sakurai, remember. So Maxwell trying to utilize the early strength of Elise to see if he can set something up with Soaz. He knows there's no vision.
Sitting in camouflage in the bush right now, Sakurai is going to play pretty safe around this. As the boomerang pops in the control ward, not able to land the cocoon, but that's the counter-offensive you can make. After you've seen Sakurai burn his flash, you can look for those plays up towards topside as Misfits.
So this is also something that we talked about at the very beginning of the draft, which for a rookie, Sakurai has great awareness. He doesn't just make these silly mistakes where he walks up to a lane where it feels like he doesn't have control. You can see how hesitant he was, and it's just big props to him for being a new player to the LEC, but honestly showcasing a lot of positive things, which is great to see because it showcases a lot of potential growth for him in the future of the LEC.
Definitely, especially like, a lot of people who are quite concerned with him replacing Werlib after that team had grown together from Mad Lions into the SK lineup, but he's having a very strong performance, very strong start to the split, definitely in the running for Rookie of the Split, you'd have to say.
Still only a couple weeks in, we'll see how the rest of the split goes as we see a bit of trading down towards bot. Rest of the map still looks very even. While Maxwell has been looking for a couple of gank attempts, Selfmade has focused on farming. So he's now level 7, has a slight advantage over Maxwell. And I'm not going to say that the pressure is mounting for Misfits. I still think they have plenty of time, but I do want to see some early proactivity from them. They need to be the team that has an early lead because you look at this scaling from the side of SK and Karma and Ezreal in the late game, very, very obnoxious to deal with. And if you think you can just engage a fight onto this duo, I'm afraid you're very mistaken.
I think the pressure's mounting a little bit on the scoreboard as well. You can see there's about 800 gold between these two teams. The extra CS on the Skarner, the Kleptomancy on Crown Shot as well, just giving them these incremental advantages that can start to take over the game. You know, you hit your item spike a couple of minutes earlier because of that extra gold, as we see Misfits actually getting in, stealing away this blue buff.
Dreams making a roam up towards the rest of his team because he knows that Ezreal is just based and Hansama has done the same. So both supports on the roam. Neither of them level 6 just yet. Not much going to happen off the back of it, though.
So I actually have a tiny Rakan point here, and it's something that I really like to do in melee matchups, is you take the Frostfang and you actually max Gleaming Quill, or you put at least 3 points into it. It means if you're taking trades down towards that bottom lane, your healing is incredibly impactful. You can see how in that last trade, we actually saw Gorilla and Hansama take a negative trade and get a lot of extra healing out of the Gleaming Quill coming back. Now, Pyrion's caught out here as the Cataclysm comes down, but the flash away from the Karma will get her to safety.
Now I can confirm for you that Gorilla has put 3 points in his
I'll be honest, I did check before I made the point, just to make sure I
thought you were
wasn't
so
incorrect.
confident in your analysis of Rakan. You didn't even have to say that. Like, you could look like a god, Medic.
No, but I like to be honest with the fans, you know?
I mean, all right, fair enough, but you are Rakan one trick, so
true.
Your knowledge is to be expected. Meanwhile, we see Selfmade looking for a play up towards the top side of the map. Could he secure first blood for his team? Because so far, SK is very happy with how the game is going. They did have a great early game against G2 last week, where they actually tracked the enemy jungler extremely well. And it feels like Selfmade, he hasn't really focused on the bot side of the map. He spent a lot more time up towards the top lane, making sure that Sakurai's okay. And I don't think his intent is to just make sure that he's keeping tabs on where Maxlor is. I think he just wants to enable Sakurai as much as possible, because honestly, his duo is playing very well in this matchup. They are ahead in farm. They've utilized the Kleptomancy very well to give Ezreal that slight lead, and a lot of praise has been kind of lightly been thrown towards the bot lane of SK in a very subtle way. Yeah, it's been peppered, exactly, where people have been giving props to Dreams and Crownshot and their development throughout the split, and Perks, that's the one that's always referenced. Oh, Perks said that Dreams is a pretty good support. And
he said that Crownshot tries.
Yeah, and he did say that. But I honestly think that the duo has shown a lot of growth compared to last split, and that's exactly what you want to see from this SK team. They qualified for playoffs, and they obviously ultimately want more. So winning against Misfits would already start separating them from a lot of the pack, but Misfits are obviously looking to do the same. And in order to do that, they need to find this early game play. So far, we haven't found it out from Maxlor.
Dreams is going to gobble up Crownshot there. Hansama trying to put as many feathers in the ground as possible, but unable to find any connections with the Blade Callers. Both junglers looking at opposite sides of the map. Maxwell was spotted on Vision, whereas I don't believe Selfmade was. He immediately goes across towards this Ocean Dragon, knowing that the enemy Elise is up towards topside, and SK should be able to secure this one pretty soundly.
Yep, but Hansama and Gorilla will quickly push in this bot wave. Meanwhile, Featherman freely farming up in mid. Won't be able to gain much priority, but he will provide an extra bit of safety for Maxlor as he secures the Rift Herald in top. You can see a couple plates coming through. The duo going to go back to base from the side of Hansama and Gorilla. So they're going to be pretty happy. And so this was I was going to say that you can notice the swap coming out from the duo as well. Very common thing that we see from many supports when the jungler decides to take Rift Herald, because you can very quickly secure a tower on the top side. And if you want to invest your plates anywhere, usually it's into your duo.
Maxwell's not in the best of places. The cocoon comes out. He's going to have to flash the wall, actually stunning up Selfmade, who was like a laser-guided missile. Looking for that impale, but Maxwell does escape, gets the Rift Herald, so all in all, Misfits do manage to find the objective that they wanted.
Interestingly, Hansama actually goes back towards bot. They decide not to go for the swap. So they're going to keep playing standard lane matchups for the time being. Wonder what Maxlor decides to do with the Rift Herald. Maybe they look to try and utilize it mid, or maybe they'll look to finally make that bot lane play. Regardless, again, want to reinforce. SK very happy in the situation that they're in. Their composition scales very well. Something that we've been seeing a lot today is the mobility that Ezreal has in these team fights, and the longer these battles go on, the better. You kind of want to play a war of attrition if you're Ezreal, you know, the constant poking, the constant chip damage. And Akama only reinforces that, because he provides massive AoE shields. Once you get a couple points in them, the cooldown gets very, very low. You provide a lot of sustain, a lot of poke, and you really enable champions like Skarner as well. So for the time being, SK, they're not worried. Misfits are the ones that need to make this play.
Late game, that artillery, basically, Ezreal basically becomes just a barrage of artillery shots, with those Mystic shots continuing to pound down on your defenses, on your fortifications. Maxwell's down towards the bottom side of the map, but he's actually been really well tracked by Vision here from SK. They continually know where he is. Even now, he's been spotted on a ward, walks onto a control ward, and Misfits. This early pick, Xayah Rakan, hasn't really worked out too well for them in the lane. They're about 10 CS down, haven't really been able to get any of those dives off, and haven't even taken more than that first plate.
Yeah, I completely agree. And now Selfmade down towards the bot lane, level 9.
As Predator.
Yep, you can also see Nart in the base, teleport available. That control ward is there for a TP if they want. The problem is, SK are aware that Featherman is missing. They know that he has TP up, the pings have come down from Pyrian, so SK just being very cautious. They gotta wait.
Gorilla takes half his HP. Importantly, no wards left on Gorilla's Spellthief's Edge, as the upgraded totem means that he wouldn't have been able to spot out Selfmade if he waited there. This ward goes down. Selfmade's still trying to dodge around Vision.
Oh, now he's been spotted.
Yeah, now he's definitely been spotted. And there's this ward in the tri-bush as well, so I think that might have caught him as he went up. Maxwell coming down here. Misfits maybe looking for a fight as Selfmade has to retreat. The Scuttle Crab goes across towards the Elise, and Misfits find a small semblance of victory in the river.
That was because Pyrion had just gone back to base. He'd only just now returned to the lane. Are they going to look for the play? Look at Syndra still in the river. Nope, they're not going to do it. They just want to provide
vision.
Extra bit of security. Yeah, this early game vision from SK, very, very good. Admittedly, SK would prefer a larger advantage up towards the top side, but props to Soaz and how he's been playing the matchup. Very safe. The Tiamat for that extra bit of wave clear has been helping him in the early game, but now we reach 15 minutes in. The gold slightly in favor of SK, and both these teams just kind of dancing around the Baron. Selfmade doing what he can to make sure that his bot lane can push out this wave, and I would assume go back to base.
Talk about Misfits wanting to play around bot lane. They're definitely doing it at the moment. They have that Rift Herald. They were looking to try and take some plates, unable to get it down in time. So now those, well, it's actually been a minute since the plates expired, but you can see how much pressure they're trying to put into getting Hansama ahead. He's gone back, got an Essence Reaver, but Crownshot is in a very pretty position here. And I know we wanted to discover some of these matchups as the game went on, especially the Syndra Karma one. I haven't seen enough in laning phase to be sure that this Syndra is a great pick into the Karma yet.
Well, so you'll never kill a Karma, right?
That's
She's
true.
one of those champions where I think she's just very safe overall. And I think the point of Syndra is that she can farm very easily. She doesn't get forced out of lane by the Karma, which is very easy to do. And I think you have potential gank setup with your Q and E. So I think it's a solid pick. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a counter, but I don't think it's a bad pick at all.
Yeah. Soa's getting chased out here by Sakurai in the top lane. Sakurai has just gone out of Mega, so Gorilla might look for the chase. The quickness is on if he wants it. Jumps in, there's the quickness, chasing onto Sakurai with the knock-up. Soaz still holding the Cataclysm, waiting for the flash. Unable to get into range, though, and Sakurai will escape.
So Ignite and Flash used from 2 Misfits members in exchange for Sakurai's Flash. He's able to buy a little bit more time, while Crownshot is actually the one playing extremely aggressively down in the bot side of the map, continuing to maintain pressure. Hansama can't even approach the wave. And this will actually allow Pyrion and Dreams to gain priority over the mid lane, move into the river first, and actually force Max Law out. That means that when Selfmade finally arrives, it's SK who have priority over the river and the spawning Infernal Drake.
17 minutes in, we have guaranteed ourselves the latest First Blood of the year in the LEC, Vedius. Previously held by Rogue at 14 minutes 59. Selfmade looking for the Infernal here. Gorilla, of course, doesn't have the ultimate. Infernal goes down. It's got to be it, you say, but I don't think it's got to be it. The teams disagree with us right now. Dreams even gobbles up the Scuttlecraft to take it out. Guess who has the longest First Blood ever in European history?
Tell me.
It's Misfits.
Oh, really?
Do you want to guess at the time? Because we seem to have some.
28.5 minutes.
28-22. That was very impressive, Vedius. You're very good at obscure facts that really don't mean much.
Thanks, Medic. I try really hard to know those things.
You have approximate knowledge of many things.
Yeah, I do. That actually sums me up perfectly. So, speaking of what knowledge I do have, what I can see is that SK have actually set up a lot of vision towards the bot side of the map, obviously, because they just secured that dragon. Now they're looking for a bit of a play towards bot. I think they wanted to try and force Hansama and Gorilla back to allow Crownshot to clear out the minion wave and start getting priority. But we've got to criticize Misfits now, because when they're running this kind of a composition, they've made nothing happen in the early game. They didn't try a swap. They didn't try and set up any dives or any plays, and they've not been able to crack any of the early towers. And I don't even think they even took that many plates. So what I feel was a great early game setup from the side of Misfits has been poorly utilized. Now, that's not to say that they don't have any power come the late game. They have pretty solid pick themselves, right? You have a Rakan and Elise, very good, especially when combined with the Syndra as well. However, I just get concerned because I think about when you're setting up for things like a Baron, how well Ezreal and Karma work together to just poke out your enemies and the amount of mobility that it gives, that I think it's going to be difficult for Misfits to be able to execute upon this composition compared to what SK have.
And we are seeing the Athene's Unholy Grail come out from Pyrion as well. We talked about that as a possibility in the build. Gives you a little bit more utility, a bit more healing. Crownshot going for a lot of damage down on this bottom lane tower, as Misfits eventually have gone for the swap. They have 5 players on the top side of the map and should be able to take that top tower pretty easily. But Crownshot will get the first tower of the game. 19 minutes, 9 seconds. And with it, SK have about a 3,000 gold lead.
Feels like a very late swap from the side of Misfits.
I agree.
Yeah, and they're now like 3,000 gold behind. Definitely not what you want to see from this Misfits squad. And it's fascinating because like it feels like they're always second on the play, SK Gaming seem to be the more proactive team on the map as to where they're moving, where they're setting up their vision, they're thinking ahead. And this is actually quite a large contrast from what we saw from them last week, where I felt like they were skipping steps and they were trying to force fights that they couldn't win. We're seeing a lot of patience. We're seeing Selfmade do what he can in the early game to protect his laners, and overall, I'm pleasantly surprised by what I'm seeing from SK.
I think that's understandable. Misfits haven't really put them to the sword too much this game either. It's quite easy to play defensively when no one's really attacking you, but you are right, they are doing what they need to do. Trinity force on Crown Shot as well, not going for the Iceborne Gauntlet here.
Okay.
So maybe relying on the Tarm Kench for the peel, but Pyrion caught out, flashes away. We still don't have our first blood.
Maxlord did expend his flash, and he will exchange it for Pyrion. So the game's slowing down right now. This is where map movements become quite interesting to me. You'll notice how SK have got a bit of a 2-2-1 setup where they've got their duo up towards the top side. The Skarner is playing around mid because he wants to provide a little bit more safety for Pyrion, and there's so much pressure being generated towards the bot side of the map with this Gnar, but he still feels very safe even with no vision, and it's because they have vision on where Maxwell is. So that's another tower secured. Look at Crown Shot go in.
Selfmade's on his way. Hunt Summer already so low. Maxwell chunked out. First blood, 20 minutes, 50 seconds it took, but looks like SK want to follow it up with a little bit more. Hunt Summer has to flash away, and SK are on the board.
Great stuff coming out from the side of SK. Crown Shot is playing phenomenally. They're generating a lot of pressure on the map, and Misfits, they have all these deep wards, but they're not valuable to them. They're not getting them anything. And instead, SK are just setting up proper vision, utilizing it well, and Misfits are just being run around the map.
Great stuff all around by SK. Crown Shot, very aggressive. Knows that on these two items, basically no one can take him on, and with the shields and the heals and the devours coming out, it's almost an unstoppable Ezreal early on in this game. You can see how aggressive he can be. I do want to come back to us discussing Misfits and the fact that they really haven't had the impetus here in the early game, but I'm going to wait on that for a second because it looks like Hunt Summer might be caught out. Crown Shot can just go for this. No flash, no ultimate. Teleport in behind Hunt Summer as well, and maybe the AD carry from Misfits has overstepped. In fact, I'm pretty sure he has. Suckrate coming in behind enemy lines, and Pyrion gets the kill.
And this is something that we actually see a lot of from Misfits. When they reset on the map, they always send one person top, 3 people mid, and 1 person bot. So all you need to do is send an extra member, and you can very easily collapse. Beautifully done by SK. They had the vision to set up the TP flank as well. Was it necessary? Well, that's debatable, but ultimately it secures them another kill, and now they can look to set up a siege onto either the tier 1 mid or the tier 2 top.
Looks like they're going top. That's where Crown Shot is, and he is their main source of damage right now. Already this tower's down to half HP, so it's down towards the bottom lane trying to do what he can. He'll get a tower. Misfits will get their second Ocean Dragon of the game, but it is small solace for them as their inner tier 2 falls in the top lane.
Now, a lot of wave clear is coming out from the side of Feathervim, which is making it difficult for SK to secure this mid tier 1. And in the same vein as last game, SK would like to take that off the board so they can more consistently set up deep vision to then set up around Baron. But we get to see a replay of that first blood. Notice how on the map, 4 members of Misfits try to collapse up towards the top side of the map, but it doesn't matter because Crown Shot got so much good early damage onto Hans Armor that Misfits were permanently in retreat. Then we get to see the collapse. Again, look at the mini-map. You've got a couple members mid from the side of Misfits. Hans Armor is extremely overextended in top side. He doesn't have any vision to help support him, and he ends up just dying. So the bot lane that Misfits were looking to play around based on what we saw in the draft were unable to do so. And SK have found advantage after advantage. 4,500 gold is now the lead they sit on.
Misfits now grouping up as 4 in the mid lane. Gorilla on the flank here, trying to find a position where he can get onto the back line of SK, but it's such a hard job to do. Almost needs to scout out, get reconnaissance in beforehand. Selfmade going in, the Impale lands only onto Soaz. That's a quickness, 3-man knockup, but Gorilla's already so low. Sakurai on his way to join the fight. Soaz low, down to half HP, he's done. And Gorilla's now the next target. You have to feel the flash in from Crown Shot. Can't quite find the connection, but Misfits are retreating. Crown Shot caught out. It might be enough damage to take him down. They can't even kill the AD carry when he's caught out, when he's out of position. Misfits do not have the damage. True Shot Barrage coming in as SK look to push down mid.
I don't know if they're going to be able to secure this tower. They did take a little bit too much damage,
but
close stuff there, but they're looking for the kill anyway.
Drops in with the Gnar! Oh, indeed! Forbidden TPs, and that's the story of Misfits right now. Not coordinated, not alive, and they're not winning this game.
Sakurai comes up massively by gnawing 3 members of Misfits into the wall. That's going to be the kills they need to allow them to secure the Baron. SK, a phenomenal game up against Misfits.
Just incredible stuff all around by SK. Sakurai going in, thought they were just going for the least, but they wanted a little bit more than that. 5-0 now in their favor, 8,000 gold ahead.
So we get to see the power of Karma in this next exchange. Notice how both teams are just grouped up in the mid lane. In this Alienware replay, look at how fast Selfmade is. He just drags the target back super quickly after he's already popped the righteous glory. Then the shields, the shields, the shield. There's just too much utility. So even though Misfits tried to go for the re-engage, they just don't have enough time. That should be a dead 80 carry. But no, he gets away once again. The power of Karma. She has so much utility, and as long as you've got damage elsewhere, you're really in a good position. So here we see a good poke landing onto Maxwell, the poke from the Karma Q into Crown Shot Q, and then Sakurai, he does what I didn't expect. He just goes in, gets a 4-man Gnar ultimate, and then, oh no! The teleport from Febiven. You hate to see it.
You do, and so much like, sure.
Sad face,
You're gonna feed me a kill on a platter, I'll take that one. Now mid lane tower goes down, SK forcing in this poke pick comp that they have developed. Is working out very well for them. Sakurai clears the minions, I'm sure that's what he was aiming for in that bottom lane, but Misfits well and truly on the ropes. And you do have to ask yourself the question, when you look for an early game jungler, you had one last week. What's Maxlord doing it?
Well, we'll leave that to the Misfits camp to decide. In any case, they were not able to find any early game leads, and honestly, they've done very little this game. It's just been the SK show. They scaled up nicely, they weren't over-aggressive, and right now they're playing on 2 lanes, but they have a pushing lane top. It's only a matter of time before they break into the base of Misfits. And this shows to me very clear growth from the side of SK. Last week, they were very over-eager. They tried to force a lot of fights that they honestly couldn't win. But this week, they feel a lot more reserved. They feel a lot more patient. And they're playing around their spikes very, very well. Now, they're going to break this base, and they're going to look for their first in-hit.
Going for the in-hit Crown Shot. Dishing out the DPS. Hextech Gunblade finished on him as well. I think the Trinity Force was a good idea. They played around that spike in power so well, and now they're going to go down towards the bottom lane. 10,000 gold lead, 27 minutes in. SK are speedrunning the end of this game.
One of the fastest games of the day, as they now siege up towards the tower, while Misfits look for an engage.
Fastest game of the day with the latest first blood of the year from SK. How quickly this game has snowballed in their favor. From a kill at 20 minutes to 5-0 up at 27 and a 10,000 gold lead. They are in such a good position. Top wave is pushing in. They still have the Baron for 50 seconds. The inhibitor tower their target. So as looking for the engage, but Selfmade just runs straight at them. The inhibitor tower will fall, and SK are going to continue to push forward.
Beautiful stuff from SK. Slow and steady wins the race. Misfits are just watching their base fall to pieces. They don't feel strong enough to even win a potential fight right now.
When will they be strong enough, though? Because they're 10,000 gold behind. You're not getting any gold at the moment.
Well, Misfits have made the decision to not go for these fights. Apparently, they're waiting for the perfect moment, and that perfect moment may never come. 2 inhibitors are now down. This could be it.
Oh, you can see Dreams caught out a little bit, but he just flashes across the wall. Now there's minions pushing in towards that inhibitor tower. Crown Shot just needs to chip away at it with those auto attacks and with the Essence Flux. The tower goes down, Nexus tower falling to a super minion as well. The suppression lands, Soa's trying to jump on the backline. They're all in on Crown Shot, but he's devoured just in time and he gets away. Sakurai kills Maxlord, Gorilla down as well, and Sakurai somehow still alive. Forbidden will kill him in the end, but that's the double across towards the Gnar, and SK are just looking for the win.
Only 2 members alive on the side of Misfits. Fortunately for them, it's a lot of their wave clear, but with 4 members of SK, I don't think it's going to be enough to stop this final siege. SK, they want to move to 3-2 in Week 3 of the LEC. They're going after Hard Summer.
An incredibly strong performance here by SK. Never in doubt, really, for them. They solidify their position as a playoff team as they take down Misfits.
Great game from SK.
Yeah.
Very little to criticize, honestly.
Super clean.
But very, very well done. Whereas for Misfits, we just didn't see anything. I feel like this gave us a lot more insight, which is what we were looking for. Where does Misfits fall on the ladder? And one of the things I said was, you know, I think they're in contention for that 4th place spot.
I don't think they are.
Based on this performance, it's tough to justify that argument, whereas SK, they're only continuing to grow. And it's funny because we said last split, and week 3 is when we started to see the downfall of Misfits and the uprise of SK, and now we're seeing a similar trend. Very big win for SK. They'll move up towards the top half of the bracket now with a big win. And it's exciting to see their growth throughout the rest of the split.
Yeah, very excited to see how they develop from here. Especially Sakurai had a very good performance once again. That 4-man Gnar or 3-man Gnar underneath the tower. Saw a lot coming out from Selfmade as well, and Crownshot as well. They all played well. Everyone on that team had a good game.
What I actually love about this Karma pick as well is that one of my notes had Pyrion plays too much for the team. When I saw him last week, he wasn't selfish enough. He wasn't playing for his lane, and that actually put him in too many deficits where his value just slowly diminished over time. A pick like Karma,
you could play for the team.
It's just really all about playing for the team, and you can see how well he enabled his team, set up for that ultimately massive mid lane fight that secured them the Baron, and I felt like he was much more solid in the mid lane. So really good stuff for SK. Obviously, many, I imagine, fans at home are going to have that debate now, Maxlaw versus Kirei. Ultimately, the team has committed to utilizing both junglers throughout the split. They have talked about that 10-man roster, and they want to try and maximize on this dual jungle performance. But when we look at early game junglers so far this split, we have definitely seen a stronger performance from Kirei in the early game.
Definitely agree with you there. We're going to have another look at probably the deciding moment of this game. It's Sakurai in the mid lane. They catch out the kill straight away onto Soaz, and you can see Misfits just unable to really get ahead in this fight.
They just can't kill Selfmade. It's just shield after shield. It's on such a low cooldown, and Crownshot, knowing that he has this utility behind him, feels he can play aggressively. He gets locked up again, gets that extra bit of sustain. Another still lands on the Sakurai. Shield healed up once again, and it's just rinse and repeat for SK. They just slowly chip away, chip away, chip away until this big ultimate comes in from Sakurai. Boom! Beautifully done from the side of SK. And, I didn't notice it in the initial replay. Thanks for pointing it out, Medic. That teleport from Febiven. Yeah. Big blunder from him.
Definitely a big blunder all around from Febiven. But with blunders all around from Misfits, I think you can say SK looked like a very strong team. Look at how quickly they snowballed that lead as well. It was about 1,000, 2,000 at the 20-minute mark to 12K when the game did end. And Sakurai, Pyrion, and Crownshot are looking to become key player of the game. But if you guys want to vote, you have to head on over to Outlaw Esports on Twitter and make sure you put in your votes. I think all of them had strong performances. Personally, I'm thinking Crownshot, as Ezreal was very on point. He was aggressive when he needed to be. But I think it was more of a team effort making him strong.
Well, Sakurai also landed the ultimate that resulted in the Baron, right? So it depends on what you ultimately value the most. I think that you could give it to any one of them, and overall it would be warranted. I was just very impressed with SK. I definitely have a higher opinion of them now after this game. But again, like, you then have to put everything, you constantly put things into perspective, right? Because what this suggests is, okay, perhaps SK is stronger than Misfits. But now, if SK is moving up, where do they stack among the teams?
That's
above the halfway line, right? Like, how do they compare to the likes of Splice, the likes of Schalke? Like, where do they fall in the pecking order? And we'll continue to evaluate that. But what we can definitely say for sure is SK are looking good.
That they are. You can see Nemesis getting ready on stage already for our next game of the day. After the break, it's time for the match of the week. It's the undefeated G2 Esports and the undefeated Fnatic as they clash on the Rift in this highly anticipated matchup. Don't you miss it.
Don't miss it. Tell your friends. Get them in.
It's the best game ever. Selfmade's on his way, Hunt Summer already so low, Maxlaw chunked out, first blood, 20 minutes, 50 seconds it took.
It's fine, we can still do it. Okay, nice. Come to me, I can give a share. Wait, Ganesh.
Nice one.
Sakurai, what the fuck?
Focus.
It's how